Another presentation on the Construction and Trades virtual series. My name is Kevin Comerford. I'm going to be the host today. A little bit about this series. Typically, every year we did a hands-on skilled trades day event at the Lake County Fairgrounds and invited schools to join and do hands-on demonstrations with the various trades. And, because of the pandemic this year, we couldn't do this. So we still wanted to reach out to you and come up with a way to educate you about the different careers in the construction trade. So that's how this idea of the construction trades and virtual series was born. And I think we're on our 10th or 11th interview now with the apprenticeship coordinator. Before I introduce Mark, let me just kind of tell you a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Kevin. I'm with the Construction Advancement Foundation. We are a union contractor trade association. Part of what we do is workforce development, and that's kind of how this comes to you today, is under that umbrella. We've partnered with the Northwest Indiana Workforce Board and the Center of Workforce Innovations. They have been instrumental in helping us put together this series. So I want to just give a shout out to those folks over there. And then just want to introduce our guest now. And our guest today is Mark Kara. Mark is the assistant coordinator for the Operating Engineers Local 150. The operators are based out of Illinois, but they cover all of Northern Illinois, Northern Indiana. I think they even go into Iowa a little bit. I'm sure Mark will tell us a little bit about that. So I guess without further ado, here's Mark. Mark, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Kevin. Doing well. How's everybody?
I think everybody's going to be on mute, so it's just going to kind of be a conversation between us. I should also mention that if there are any questions, please put them in the chat function, and I will be able to look those up, and I could ask those questions of Mark. So chat function is, if you just scroll over your screen, you should see a little pop-up that comes at the bottom of your screen, and it should say chat, and you can just type your question in there. But like I said, I have access to all that, so type any questions that you may have as this program progresses. So. Well, I guess we'll dive right into it, Mark. I guess I want to know a little bit about how you got into the operators. I'm sure you're a card-carrying operating 150 member, but now you're the assistant coordinator for the apprenticeship program. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path and how you got into the operators, and then maybe a little more specifically how you got into training?
Sure. So I've been in the operating engineers. I've been a card carrier for just over 30 years now. So I'm getting towards the latter part of my career. I would say it all started as a young kid. I lived in the Burns Harbor area, and they were building what would be called 8094, I-94 at the time I lived there. So I used to sit in my back window of my bedroom and watch the scrapers go back and forth. And it just tweaked my curiosity. I was still way too young to probably ask any really good questions, but it was neat, a little boy watching big construction equipment. As I moved on, went through school, I personally graduated from Chesterton High School. I was basically born and raised in Chesterton. Going through school, I always say I was a pretty good student, a smart student, but never saw myself as taking the college pathway. So quite honestly, I took a lot of the classes in school, wood shop, metal shop, electronics, graphic arts. I think I even took home gardening, and I was probably doing everything I could to steer myself away from higher math and history and those things that didn't interest me. And I will always look back and say to this day, I know a lot of things because I took those classes, the things that I like to do. But ultimately, after graduating from high school, I joined the Army. I spent 4 years in the military. In the last year in the military, I was able to run heavy equipment. So that was kind of my first introduction to operating machinery. Discharged out of the Army after 4 years, and the timing was good. The operating engineers were hiring. There was a lot of work going on everywhere. That was back in 1990. So right off the bat, I went out to work for a contractor at US Steel in Gary and running a scraper. I felt my career in the Army, I spent a lot of time on a bulldozer. I think I was in the operators union for over 4 years before I sat in the seat of a bulldozer. But and that kind of led to where I was. I've worked through from 1990 on. I spent about 12 years out at US Steel working for a couple different contractors. So I was working in what would be considered like a material producing environment. It was not construction. I had a slight interest in computers. And so when I wasn't operating machinery, I was learning how to build computers, how to make computers network and talk to one another, which ultimately I asked a question to a friend of mine who was a mechanic prior. It was a computer question, and it ultimately, that individual became Local 150's first network administrator for the computers. I ended up at the apprenticeship program as the network administrator. I think they had 5 computers and a server at the time. I was tasked with in-house taking care of that, and it had grown, and that was back in June of 2002. So over time, I had just kept learning more and more about the apprenticeship. Being the computer guy, I was always asked to mine data. We have to deliver reports to the Department of Labor and things of that nature. And I guess it forced me to learn more and more and more about how the apprenticeship works. And ultimately, here I am now, the assistant coordinator. Didn't really want to go to college as a kid, and now I kind of help lead a college of operating engineering.
It's funny how that works out, you know?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's kind of dive and switch directions and talk a little bit about the operating engineers, the Local 150. And I know it's a big union, and you know, construction's only probably a little sector of
Sure.
what you do. I mean, you guys have the manufacturing and all that, as you mentioned in your career path. But can you talk a little bit about the type of work that your trade performs? You know, I mean, you mentioned bulldozers and scrapers, but I mean, I know what you guys do, and it's vast. Can you speak a little bit about some of the equipment that you guys operate?
So operating engineers, I'm going to say we're very diverse now. When I first got in, we were heavy equipment operators, but since then, well, let's just stick with that right now. Operating engineers operate heavy equipment, heavy machinery, and I put a few areas here on road construction equipment. So anybody driving down the road will see road graders and bulldozers and asphalt pavers and concrete pavers and all that equipment that's used to ultimately take kind of like virgin ground and turn it into a roadway or build a bridge. Tear out an existing roadway and rebuild it. The roads around here, especially for us, for the drivers, it's not so nice that weather, you know, Mother Nature tears our highways up. But for us operating engineers, it's nice because it's security in our work. The roads are always going to be needing repaired. But we also work in building construction, so cranes, small support equipment like skid steers, forklifts. We even operate elevators that you see if you've driven downtown Chicago and seen the large tower cranes up above the skyscrapers. And then if you look close enough, you'll see exterior elevators on those buildings as they're being built. It's an operating engineer that's operating that elevator, taking the other construction
and material.
Absolutely. And then we cover drilling. So water well drilling. You live out in rural America and need a well drilled, that's usually an operating engineer. We do geothermal drilling, which would be drilling 500 to 700 feet down into the ground to put what we call field loops in for heating and cooling of buildings. Geotechnical drilling, which is really just when a customer wants to build a building or the state wants to build a new highway, we need to drill down into the ground and see just what's below the grass that we're standing on. So
make sure that the substructure is stable and in order to put a building on or a surface.
Absolutely, to guarantee that the building's going to stay above ground when it's all said and done. And then we also do horizontal drilling, which would be the pipeline industry, telecommunications, all that fiber optic cable that needs to be put in the ground now, rather than dig open ditches to bury that cable. We can drill right underground and underneath streams, underneath existing buildings, parking lots, and all of that, and be able to pull those cables back to where we need them. And then with that, we have 3 other programs. Well, the drilling equipment, that is its own apprenticeship program. Those apprentices have to be fairly knowledgeable in geology, especially the local geology and what's below the ground. We have the heavy equipment repair technicians. So those who are interested in becoming a mechanic, all the equipment needs repaired, and we have an apprenticeship program just for that specializes in mechanics. And then also with all these buildings, building bridges, roads, we have to have somebody inspect those jobs to make sure that the materials that the engineers spec'd out for the job are the correct materials. We need to make sure that they're being applied in the correct fashion, the way the manufacturer specifies the application. So we also have a 4-year apprenticeship that teaches those inspectors how to go out and properly take samples, how to utilize the equipment needed to, such as a nuclear density gauge that goes out and determines when the asphalt goes down that we're compacting it correctly and that the earth is compacted correctly.
So you just what you just mentioned, you mentioned various different apprenticeship programs within the program itself. So if you're somebody who's interested in getting into the construction end of things, would you apply and would you automatically, say you're accepted, and we'll talk a little bit more about that process, but would you be able to go straight into the construction aspect of things or straight into the mechanical side of things, or how is that determined? Is it based on like testing qualifications or?
There are 4 separate applications. So an individual who is approaching Local 150 would have to make a decision up front as to which program they were most interested in. So, and I'll be honest, mechanics usually know they want to be a mechanic, and those who don't want to fix the machines, they want to break it, they want to be an operator, they want to be in the seat. So, and at time of application, you could apply for any or all of our programs. They just are definitely 4 separate applications with slightly different requirements.
So specifically, what are the 4? You have mechanics, you have heavy equipment.
Yep, the drillers,
the drilling, and
the testers,
the
material testers or inspectors.
Okay.
We call it the construction and building inspectors program. Right. And so on that side of things, on the construction and building inspectors, with your application, we require college level algebra, college level English. There's a lot, it's very heavy in report writing, very heavy in formulas. All of these sampling gauges and devices utilize some form of algebra to determine proctors and things of that nature when you're sampling things. On the mechanics side, somebody who, when I look at applications for mechanics, individual usually took advantage of some kind of diesel technology program, automotive technology, electronics, most likely attended a career center if possible, and then even went as far as to attend like a UTI or Lincoln Tech or Wyotech, some sort of tech school immediately out of high school. The machinery is very advanced these days. Almost every machine has a computer in it. They're definitely not like the machines when I first entered the operators. A technician these days walks up to the machine with a laptop in his hand almost, for that first walk to diagnose and start assessing the problems. Operators, we require, well, I think we're going to get into requirements, but still all those vocational classes are something we look at. I don't know if you want to branch into the application process, but
I was actually gonna probably segue into a little bit about the actual apprenticeship program and how it's designed and structured. But real quick, out of those 4 different applications, I imagine the most common application is the heavy equipment operator. Yeah, and that's just standard operator. Is that what you guys call it?
We call operating engineer, heavy equipment operator. Exactly.
And I think when I see construction in the field, obviously, before the job starts, you see the technical or the geotechnical
The drillers, yep.
mountain, and they drill core samples. But for the most part in construction, you see the heavy equipment operators. I mean, that's the
Right.
ones that are running the excavating equipment and the bulldozers and skid steers and things like that. So I think we're going to kind of mostly focus on that particular program today. Can you talk a little bit about that program and how it's structured? How many years is it?
Yep.
And what is the schooling versus work requirements as you're going through the program?
So first and foremost, the apprenticeship programs, at least all of us in the construction trades, probably the most important part is their earn and learn program. So most of them, ours, the operating engineers, we call it a 4-year apprenticeship program. The Department of Labor sees it as a 6,000 hour apprenticeship program. And if you break down a construction season, if work is on average about 1,500 hours a year, so multiply that times 4 and you've got 6,000 hours. And the earn and learn part is apprentices and individuals apply for our programs. We score the application. It's scored based on academics, work experience, and a couple reference letters. It's those individuals come in and get evaluated and eventually go to work. It's kind of odd that these machines are they're not easy to run, but anybody can run them with the proper training. But an apprentice can expect to almost go to work before they ever go to school, which seems kind of odd. It's definitely not the college platform. But in that on-the-job training, being at work and being paid by the contractor is that 6,000 hours. That's the 6,000 hours of on-the-job training, or on-the-job learning, as they call it now. Along with that, we have what we call related instruction, and that's the school part of the apprenticeship, and that's done. And Kevin, you mentioned we're a very broad as far as our jurisdictional area. We cross the Mississippi into Iowa, and we go across Indiana, all just short of 1 county shy of Ohio. So we're very large, and we have one centralized training facility in Wilmington, Illinois, which is where I'm at right now. So from the Northwest Indiana area, the school is roughly an hour away. The schooling for that program is roughly 192 hours per year for the first 3 years. So apprentice operators can expect to have 80 hours of required training each winter. So we run our main training season is January 1st, or that first full week in January, through the end of March. And that's when we try to get all the apprentices into the training site. That's when the contractors are at their slowest. There's not a whole lot of road construction and things going on in the middle of winter around here. So we take advantage of that time and bring the apprentices in and do their mandatory training. The first 2 years, we do 80 hours a year of what we tell the apprentices we want them to learn. So it'd be much like going to K through 12. You show up and the teachers have an agenda for you, and that's kind of how we are. The third year of the apprenticeship, the third year of classes, we allow apprentices to pick from some electives. So that time of their career, they're starting to find themselves working in the crane industry or the road building industry. And so we encourage them to take more advanced classes to help them with that industry. But that 192 hours is 80 hours of training each year, and then 64 hours of your own time out here running equipment. So our training site is open 6 days a week, 7 to 3:30 each day. And our members are able to come out and basically sign out a crane, sign out a bulldozer, and go out and get what would be almost like one-on-one instruction with the instructors while they're out here.
Oh, that sounds very cool. It's
very nice. And there's no charge. That's the only thing an individual has to pay for as part of this, if you want to call it tuition, would be there's a $25 fee to apply. And then it's really the putting forth the time and effort to get out here to the training site. Most individuals in what I call District 7, that's the Northwest Indiana district for our union, all live more than 30 hours from the training site. So when they come out here to train, we take care of the hotel room for them. There's no hotels on site, but we don't expect anyone to have to drive back and forth an hour each day. We'd rather them put forth that effort to learn out here. But so they're working on the machines that we have, what we call 3 core machines that an apprentice has to pass a proficiency test on. So something from the bulldozer family, the backhoe family, and the loader family. Those are 3 areas of machines that if you become proficient on, we feel that's a good solid basis to be able to work for most contractors in our industry. Of course, there's the ability to get in the crane side of things and the paving equipment and drilling equipment, items that fall outside of that core, but those would be more specialty machines. But the training side is here, like I said, those 6 days a week at no charge to be able to, take you wherever you want to go. So there's no thousands of dollars per semester. And ultimately when you become a journeyman, you have no college debt to pay off. And you've been earning that entire time.
That sounds
Some
like
of the
a
other,
fantastic program. I actually want to go out there right now and hop on a bulldozer.
we've got a lot of them right now. And then so I mentioned the 3 performance tests, and then also an individual has to, if medically able to, obtain a CDL, a commercial driver's license, prior to graduating to journeyman as well. 'Cause in most of our industry these days, some form of a commercial driver license is needed, whether you see the cranes going down the highway. Those are operators driving those cranes at that time, and that requires a commercial driver's license.
You're talking about the truck cranes that have boom on it, and
absolutely, they're very mobile. And even something like a small skid steer, a lot of times a contractor expects the operator to be able to drive a dump truck with a trailer to pull that skid steer to the job site and then get it back to the yard at the end of the night. So maintaining your driver's license is very important. I said, as far as getting in the applications, they're a once a year application. I will say COVID kind of messed up last year. We did not take applications last year, and that's probably only the second time in as long as I've been at the training site that we did not take in applications. We take those in typically in November. We are working to get that date pushed back to September. It takes a long time to grade all these applications. We take in roughly 5,000 applications in that month across our entire jurisdiction. Applicants, though, in the Northwest Indiana area, when they apply, would be, I guess, put in a pool, ranked by score, but you're only kind of competing with those individuals that live in your same jurisdictional area. So when I say 5,000 applicants, that's in Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. Yeah. We probably take in closer to 500 to 700 out of our Maryville office alone. And I'll be honest, roughly 50% of them never turn the application back in. So you're working with 250 individuals or so.
And then roughly on a average year, about how many people from the Maryville area would get in out of those 200?
I'm gonna guess 30 roughly.
Okay, so the competition's pretty fierce.
It's pretty fierce, and so we try to properly vet those applications, and I'll tell you a little bit about the application. I talked about the point system. Academics it's a 25-point application, and 10 of the points come from your report card, or your transcripts, I should say. For the schools that offer the vocational classes, we give points for those classes. We give a point for every semester that a student gets a grade of C or higher in those courses. And that would be like your wood
building
shop
trades program at a local school for 2 years. That could be up to 4 points.
And actually, you kind of get double points on a building trades course. When it's a 2-year program like that, we give the student the semester points that they gain out of that program. But on top of that, if they complete that entire program, we add a couple points on the work experience side of things, because that's kind of it's a work-based learning format. So we're giving them some work experience for that as well. But also, we've come to realize over time that not all schools offer those vocational classes anymore. So because the apprenticeship is a school, and we're looking for individuals that are willing to take on the effort and complete the required related instruction, showing up to work on time and all those things. we feel a student who takes advantage of the schooling they do have, for every semester that is in high school that a student stays at a B average or higher, we award a point per semester for that as well. So that, and like I said, I've opened thousands of transcripts, and not all schools offer the classes that we were giving points for anymore, and we can't not be available to those students as well.
Yeah. So that covers the academics. Now, what if somebody goes to college and has like 2 years at Ivy Tech for, whatever? I mean, would they get some academic points for attending college after high school? And could that?
Absolutely. All transcripts. So I always say, talking to high schoolers, your high school transcripts is what we want. If you attend, I've got classes myself at Ivy Tech. And so those transcripts, we grade those in the same way. If the classes are relevant to construction by some state, we give points for those, as well as a student that's kind of going to college full time for those couple of years. We give those semester points as well. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of students get more points off those college transcripts on the semester side of things. I mean, I know when I started paying for my tuition, I did much better in school than when my parents were paying for me. So
you and me both.
Yeah. So we give those points as well. The work side of things, it's always tough. Yeah, it's always tough with a high school graduate because they've been going to school their whole life and they haven't started working, and therefore having those points for the building and construction trades. I'm going to say like the Porter County Career Center, if you complete the diesel technology program there, that's worth 2 extra points on the experience side. Once you're 18 or older and can start working towards a commercial driver's license, if a applicant comes to us at time of application and already has their CDL driver's license, that's a CDLA is worth 2 points on. And that's another 10-point piece, the work experience. So it's 10 points for work, 10 points for academics. Otherwise,
so if you have, say it was your instance where you went through the military and you were operating heavy equipment, that would obviously count as work experience. Now, is that weighed more heavily than compared to somebody who is working on a CNC machine in a machine shop?
It is. As an operator, when I operated in the military, that was directly related to our trade. Somebody operating a CNC machine is still advantageous for us to grab that person because they're still a very skilled person. High eye-hand coordination is there. Their mind's working in that same constructive kind of a way, but it's not directly running heavy equipment. And those things are looked at. An individual who spent a year or more in the military running equipment gets a point value for that. Quite honestly, any individual who maintains employment with any kind of, I work Dairy Queen for that matter. But if you work there and you get to work every day and that boss sees value in there and retains you as an employee, we award you for being employable. Because really, ultimately, in the end, we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on training. I'm going to guess 25,000 or more per year per apprentice to train them out here. And we don't expect everyone to be able to run equipment when they get here. That's our job to teach. But we expect the individual to show up every day and have a great attitude and ready to learn. And that goes far.
Well, with that kind of investment into an individual, you're going to want to make sure that you hire the right people. So,
correct.
And that doesn't only go for the operating engineers, but you hear that from all the trades.
Sure.
So you mentioned the 2 components, the academics, the work experience, and then you said there was one more component, like letters of recommendation.
Letters of recommendation. Yep, that's a 5-point piece of that. That's the final 5 points. And I always, if you're an individual who's highly interested in one of these programs, and you're doing things to make you available to those programs, then we look for reference letters from individuals who can vouch for your enthusiasm towards operating equipment or maintaining equipment and things of that nature. I always say, don't get 2 reference letters from your 2 best buddies you hung around with, because chances are they know the things about you that we're maybe not so interested in. So getting a letter from an employer, a school teacher, a religious person, if you're going to church, a priest, somebody who knows more about you. And
Volunteer,
really
somebody
talk
you
about-
volunteer for. or something like
Absolutely.
that.
Yep.
Okay, so applications taken in November, maybe you're gonna take those in September in the foreseeable future. You hand in a complete application. The panel goes through it and say you get enough points to make it to the next step. What is the next step? Is it an interview after that, or do you go straight into the program?
The next step is what we do. It's a 20-hour evaluation. So and we structure that in several ways to get individuals down here, knowing that we're a considerable drive for most to get to the training site. It's 20 hours. It's broken down into 5 4-hour chunks, if my math is right, where we spend 4 hours on an individual type of machine. So yeah, an applicant coming down here can expect to run a skid steer for 4 hours. They'll run an off-road truck, an articulating dump truck for 4 hours, a combination backhoe, a small bulldozer. And then we do what we call it the CDL side or the crane side. And that's an individual having to do things like change a tire, drive a pickup truck and back up a trailer between some pylons. Most of the work in that area is several individuals changing a tire. Who stands in the back with their hands in their pockets and watches the other guys work, or who jumps to the front of the line and tries to get the job done. It's a lot of participation and initiative and things like those types of skills. The 4 machines that are run are an individual is given minimal instruction. Obviously, we go over safety points first, and then identify what the controls are in the machine, and they're put in an environment where you can't hurt each other. And we just want to watch over a 4-hour period how an individual progresses in 4 hours. Do they ask questions? If an individual asks a question, how do they respond to the answer? Does that help? Looking for teachability, somebody who's going to be able to pick these skills up. The safety points are covered hard. When we score an individual during that evaluation, 75% of the scoring is based on taking instruction, listening to the instructions, not doing something that you didn't ask if you could do. Very small amount of it really deals with your ability to operate the machine. We're not expecting anyone to come out here and be great, but it's amazing when some of these kids have grown up on farms and have run skid steers to clean out cattle stalls or help dad or grandpa or whoever clean a ditch with a backhoe. That really shows, and they do get rewarded for having those better skill sets. But the focus on the points is safety and listening to the instructions and not doing unsafe acts and things of that nature. And then that 20 hours concludes with an interview with a panel, an oral interview. So we do go through a set of questions. Everybody gets the same question. We like the interview because we find out a lot more about individuals in an interview than we do on their application. The application is very cut and dry, and you get limited information. An interview, somebody can say something that triggers us to ask further questions, and we take notes down about those individuals. Occasionally, when we're bringing in new apprentices, there's contractors that are asking for specific types of workers and looking for individuals with specific skills, and you find that it could just be a young person who grew up with a family that worked in the concrete business, and we find out they have a vast knowledge in concrete, and concrete's something, it's kind of a niche business out there. So concrete pump trucks and concrete pavers and stuff, we can use that information to kind of help guide these individuals. After that oral interview and week 1 evaluation, everybody is rescored again. And then once the union halls, the dispatch halls start opening up and needing new apprentices, we'll then schedule individuals for a second week evaluation, which is 40 hours. And that is I always say, if you can get here and do everything safe and keep up with that learning attitude, you're going to get through week 2. We spend a lot more time on that 40 hours training the individuals towards where we think they're going to go for their first job. So if that contractor called and anticipates needing 5 or 6 apprentices for scrapers for a big mass dirt kind of a job, then we're going to take individuals from that area and teach them for those particular jobs, so they can kind of like I said in the beginning, you kind of hit the ground running without any school. We do try to set you up for success. You know, we don't want to set
Yeah.
anybody up for failure.
Yeah,
but
you can't send somebody out on the job running a, skid steer who's never been on a skid steer before.
never been right, exactly.
No, okay. I learned a lot there. I didn't know exactly how that selection process works. So that was very interesting. So, let's talk a little bit about the paycheck. Now, as you go, well, how long is your program? You know, you said, was it 4 years?
4 years, 6,000 hours.
6,000 hours. Okay.
The paycheck, that's what everybody wants, right?
Yeah. So as you go through the program, obviously you're going to progress in your pay, but how does that work? Do you progress several times throughout the year, or is it on an annual basis?
It's so our apprentices and the operators start out at roughly 50% of the journeyman scale. And then healthcare is exactly the same as a journeyman. In most cases, the pension, and we have what's called vacation savings. So we don't take vacation when work is good. During those construction months, we work. And then in the wintertime, when there's no work, we get a check in the mail the end of January, 1st of February. And that is every hour we work. Part of our fringe benefit fund is there's a little vacation piece in there. So we don't get paid vacation. We just get a vacation check once a year, and that's there to use. The 50% pay, then an apprentice that starts off brand new as a first year apprentice is making 50% of the wage. At 1,500 hours of on-the-job training, and apprentices have to, on a monthly basis, turn their work hours into us. So that's how we can track their advancement. Once an apprentice has 1,500 hours of on-the-job training, they've taken their 80 hours of mandatory first year classes. They've got their minimum of 64 hours machine time out here. And a couple other little classes we got to do in there. Then they would advance. So roughly every year could be an advancement. And those, and basically 10% wage increase per year. So you're always working towards the journeyman scale. We do break the last 2 years of the apprenticeship. The third and fourth year have increments. So there's third year, second, first half and second half of each of those years, and there's a
instead of
5%.
10, instead of another additional 10% on your wage, it'll go into increments of 5.
5 for those, correct. And in the half years are just based solely on the job training hours. So 750 hours per increase. And then when you hit either of the whole years, those have to be grouped with related instruction. And when you get ready to go from second to third year, you have to have at least one proficiency test done out of your 3. And then there's a proficiency required at each of the years after that. To graduate, you have to have that CDL, a commercial driver's license. And also, once an apprentice hits third year, their pension contribution rate and their vacation savings contribution go to the same as a journeyman at that point. So
you had talked a little bit about one of the other benefits besides the pay, and that's your fringe benefits. Prior to joining the Construction Advancement Foundation, I worked at Superior Construction. We were a large industrial heavy highway contractor, and we actually had negotiate. I don't know how it all worked out, but we had the operating engineers 150 insurance company, and that was my first taste of like real insurance, and I was really impressed at the quality of and affordability that it provided me, when going to the dentist or going to the doctor. And I don't think a lot of young people who might be listening understand the importance of all those benefits, but can you explain a little bit about your benefit package and, what it covers and what a great asset that is to have as a union tradesperson?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, when we talk to young apprentices, you just hit it on the head. It is hard to pass on the value of insurance in retirement because that's so far. As a kid, you're invincible. Nothing can hurt you. So what do I need insurance for? Just give me that money on my check. But as you get older, obviously us old people, I'll say you're gonna be happy you have it. And the union, Local 150 made a lot of changes around the time of the Affordable Care Act and how we structured our insurance, which makes it even more advantageous to a young person. When we go to work every day, we're expected to put in a good 8 hours, work for 8 hours pay. Because we talked about the wage, and at 50% of a journeyman scale, a first-year apprentice can expect to make around $23 an hour right now, and that's pretty good check for somebody just getting out of high school. But the contractor sees that as more of around $55, $60 an hour, because the contractor still has to pay the fringe benefit package that we talked about. So out of that $23 an hour, an individual is paying taxes and a little bit of union dues. The contractor writes a second check for every individual, basically, to the benefit fund, the fund office, and that's our pension. So we have what's called a multi-employer pension. So when or a guaranteed pension. So when I retire, I'm going to get a guaranteed pension payment every month until I die. Our healthcare has been turned into a credit program. So every hour we work, we get, I'm just going to guesstimate it, roughly 15 credits per hour going to our little healthcare piggy bank. And depending on the healthcare option that we pick, they all come with a fee, a monthly fee. And the benefit office just takes that many credits out of your piggy bank every month to pay for your insurance. A young person needs minimal insurance, but still gets the same hourly contribution that an older, that I would get at 30 years in the union. So if an individual chooses only the amount of insurance they need, they're saving all those other credits. And where that comes in big is when that individual gets ready to retire, all the credits they saved by being kind of frugal with their healthcare credits early on are there to take care of your healthcare once you're retired. That's probably one of the biggest issues with individuals when they're ready to retire is, how am I going to afford healthcare when I retire? The way the union set it up, we not only have the credit program so you can save those credits and turn those into retiree healthcare credits, but we also had put an annuity in our contracts quite some years ago. It's a retiree medical savings plan. So that's an annuity through Fidelity, is the company we use. And there's money being placed into that annuity every paycheck by your contractor. And I think that's gaining about 4% interest right now. So that money is used to also fund your insurance when you retire. So between the credits that you saved by only picking the plan you needed and that annuity, operator retiring shouldn't have to take any money out of their pension check to pay for their health care.
It's amazing. And I know people who've been in the construction trades, not only the operators, but electricians and other trades. And they've retired and they're living very comfortable lives. They have health insurance. And it's just a great asset that I think you really can't put enough emphasis on, especially when you're young, about, how great these benefits are.
Sure.
To the individuals who are in these trades. And we're running a little bit out of time. We only got a couple minutes left, but I do want to get into just kind of, some characteristics that you look for in an individual, or who would make a successful operator. What do the contractors look for? What kind of individual and qualities are they looking for in an applicant?
Everybody looks at about the same, but the contractors, they don't like cell phones. So they're looking for somebody that can work and not being on their cell phone. That's probably the number one negative we get from contractors about apprentices, is we can never get them off their cell phone. So cell phones are a big issue. At times you need your cell phone to work, but it's obvious when you're using it to work. But somebody who right off the bat likes to be outdoors. If you're a person who stays holed up in the back room of the house and never comes outside, you're probably not, this isn't something for you. Somebody who's always outside looking for something to do, absolutely. We work outside. We don't necessarily sit in a machine all the time. A lot of our jobs these days, horizontal directional drilling for telecommunications. The operator he's sitting on a machine with no cab on it. There's another individual, an operator with a locator box, who's walking back and forth, keeping track of where that rod is. Somebody who wants to learn all the time, that'll ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Constantly, lifelong learning. Our operators, every day at the training site, we have probably 200 to 300 individuals out here a day, and only a portion of those are young apprentices. A lot of them are seasoned journeymen that are maybe the area that of expertise that they are in, that work is on the lull right now, and they're trying to learn something new to advance and go on to a different industry. So lifelong learners. We have to travel, so you must expect as an operating engineer, an hour and 15-minute drive one way to the job is not. I mean, I drive an hour and 10 minutes every day to get to work. I'm a little bit out of the norm because I work for the training facility, but our jobs move. Once the building's built, your next job is going to be
Go
somewhere
to the next
different.
job. Yeah, and that's the way it
so-
is for all the trades. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to be able to. So that's why you have to have the driver's license, reliable transportation.
Correct.
Must be responsible. Be on the job at before the shift starts every day.
And willing to stay till the job ends at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Your quitting time is usually not a set time on the clock. It's all dictated by what's the weather in the future looking like. Do we need to work a little later today because we might not work tomorrow? So being flexible. And back when I first started working at the apprenticeship program, there was a lot of the stereotypical construction worker was somebody that couldn't go to college. They're not smart enough for college. They're going to be a construction worker instead. And that's absolutely not the case. The individuals we have coming into the programs have every opportunity to go to college and choose to work with their hands and be outside, but still have the mental capacity to do anything they want. It's not easy work. Like I said, computers have worked their way into all of our machines. So to have just to be comfortable around a computer, you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be a programmer. You just need to be comfortable around them. Our cranes are monitored by computers. Having a good attitude, show up every day with a smile on your face, and just be a self-starter and safety minded. That's the other thing, is those machines are big, and yeah, they can go fast, but they also hurt people really bad and hurt other things. So contractors are giving you their $50,000 to $1 million machine to run, and they expect it to be kept up nice and ready to go the next day. But that smile and getting there on time and willing to learn takes you a long way with our contractors.
I have one question in the chat that came up, and this is from Becky Homans. She wants to know if there's additional support for individuals with no experience or previous knowledge, which I think we've already covered that. But for those who have learning disabilities, is there any help for people who have learning disabilities?
I guess we go out of our, we will help anybody. And everyone always asks, how long does it take to become an operator? Well, it depends on a person. We have people who are, members who we assign an instructor to for that. We've done tests orally instead of in writing because we had an individual who was dyslexic and had a very hard time with a certification exam and has to become a certified crane operator. We were able to reach out to the certifying entity and find out a way to give that individual the test in a way that he could pass that exam, which happened to be an oral exam. So we don't have, we make ourselves available. We do what we have to do, as long as the person can meet the requirements of getting into the machine, being able to sit for long periods. There's not something physical keeping them from being able to do our work. I mean, in the end, you have to still be able to do the work. But as far as learning disabilities, I'm not an expert on learning disabilities, but we teach all types of individuals out here and work very diligently to make sure that they are given the ability to succeed, just like somebody without that problem.
Yeah, I think that goes for all the trades. I think some of the best talent could be some of those people with learning disabilities, and we don't want to turn those people away, because you might be, turning away one of your best workers that may ever come through the organization. So
absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. Is there anywhere people can go to find out more information about the operating engineers? I put the closing screen on. Is all this information correct on here?
In that, ASIP local150.org is our website. If somebody were to go to local150.org, that's the union's website, which has a link to the apprenticeship site on it. But that is the ASIP, www.asiplocal150.org is our website. We try to keep it current. I'll be honest with you. The front page is not current at the moment because we put a message up there. I noticed this yesterday when we actually closed due to COVID back a year ago in March, and that screen saying we reopened in April is still up there. So I have to update that. But we have a frequently asked questions section in there, and a lot of these questions that come up are the same questions from everybody. So we try to keep that up to date and current with any new questions that might arise. We definitely post right on the front page when applications are going to reopen. So like I said, right now, they're currently all closed. A last little bit, when an individual wants to apply for the program, when we open, you need to make sure you have a valid driver's license, and that the real kicker here is that your address on your driver's license needs to match your actual mailing address. So we have individuals who are between, Kevin, you're moving eventually.
Yeah.
Got to keep your driver's license up to date, and they will make you fix that before we accept your application request. And then I mentioned earlier, there's a $25 fee, and that needs to be a money order. So we accept money orders and made out to Local 150 Apprenticeship Fund. That's the main things that are needed. What we do, I know we're out here in Illinois, but when we open our applications, we typically go to each of the district halls twice during that month. So in Maryville off Taft Street, anybody familiar with that area, our Union Hall has a crane and I believe it's a bulldozer. It shows how much I pay attention.
The big crane, you get, I know exactly where it's at.
Exactly. And we
right
will
off of
we advertise a minimum of 30 days in advance. And we try to get that information out. It's out there on social media. So that seems to be anymore the best way to advertise, but we still also put an ad in the newspapers, the local papers like the Northwest Indiana Times and things like that.
So for those students out there interested and you're on social media, I would encourage you to look through all the trades and follow their social media pages so you could get notified of when these application periods are opening. We also created the WeBuildNorthwestIndiana.com website. So there's individual pages in there for each of the trades. And I know, Mark, every year when that comes out, you get me that the notification on that. So I'll make that available as well on the WeBuild site. And then also on here is the Center of Workforce Innovation has adult learning centers. So for those of you that need to brush up on your math skills or things like that, you could call this CWI at this phone number here on the closing screen. So please write down this contact information. And also in the chat feature, it looks like the Center of Workforce Innovation put Mark's contact information, his email address, and his phone number, which is the same phone number that you see on your screen right now. So Mark, a lot of valuable information. It's a great trade. I know a lot of my friends, I wouldn't say a lot of my friends, but I have a couple friends that are operators, and I know they all love their work that they do, and they all make a good living. And I thank you for coming on today and sharing with us, a little bit about the apprenticeship program. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure the students out there learned a lot as well. So thanks once again.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And yeah, use my contact info and feel free to reach out to me.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Well, thanks for joining us today, and that concludes this session.